Hello and welcome to the Dead NBA podcast. My name's Sean and joining as always is the one and only Dante Boffman. Mr. Boffman, man, how are we?
Good, Shawnee. Good to hear those famous words.
Iconic opening. And we're also joined by Lucas Petridis, who has a funny he would like to say at the start of the pod. Is that the intro you want?
Oh yeah, that all works with me.
Yeah, awesome. Take it away.
But I'm actually going to build and then eat a nacho hat, so I only have a couple of minutes. And I just have one little query or prompt. Imagine if the Bucks kept Brogdon.
I was actually going to bring that up today.
I can't believe it wasn't the first thing I said after they won.
Yeah, but like they wouldn't have Drew if they had kept Brogdon. Do you want a serious answer? You're just being a funny bugger.
No, just being an asshole.
But like it's maybe they win the year before. That's what happens if the Bucks beat Brogdon.
Good call. All right. Well, sorry for fizzling you guys out in the first minute. I'll go eat this nacho hat. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for stopping in.
All right. Well, that was a rocky start to the pod, but outside of Lucas's nacho hat of a joke, it's a great time to be a basketball fan, is it not, Dante Boffa? This is because of the condensed season and the condensed off season with COVID, we have everything getting smushed into one tiny window. So while usually we would have a week between the draft and free agency, and we can like grade all the players and do this and that, grade all the picks, this is right into it. And it seems like the off-season news is already happening during the draft, somewhat taking away the flair from the draft. But this is just a fucking news dump. And Dante, where do you want to start with this?
Well, I think the best place to start is obviously we had the draft. Was yesterday? Time's just like in a vortex at the moment. I think it was yesterday. We're recording this on Saturday. I think the draft was on Friday. The Westbrook trade that went down between the Wizards and the Lakers, I think, is probably the most pertinent piece of news. So that was a pretty like out of nowhere bombshell type of trade. So it was Westbrook and a couple of seconds going to the Lakers in exchange for Kuzma, KCP, Montrez, and the 22nd pick. So it was kind of being billed as like a blockbuster. It's like blockbuster trade, and I was like, this is just a sad trade because anyone who's on the like blockbuster, like big three, Westbrook, OMG bandwagon, blockbusters for like former MVPs don't happen for Kuzma.
Yeah. If you're saying that you're like uniting all NBA players, it's like this isn't the whole to unite a fucking all NBA player. But for some reason, Rob Pelinka must think some people are giving him the benefit of the doubt and saying there's some 6D chess being played here, but I think he's a fucking idiot. This might go down as one of the worst trades in the history of the league. Like to give up. So you've got this one incredibly untradeable contract of Russell Westbrook. I think he's getting 44 mil this coming season and 47 mil the following season in a player option, which I think he's going to pick that up. So you've got this massive untradeable contract that is just, you talk about these albatross contracts and how they're just completely unmovable. And these massive supermaxes have only been traded for one another because it's so hard to divvy it up into smaller pieces. Somehow he's Tommy Shepard has managed to divvy it up into small pieces with Kuzma, KCP, and Montrezl Harrell. And just at that, before even factoring in the fact that they sent the 22nd pick, which is a nice pick, just looking at that, you've got this one massive contract that's hard to trade. You're breaking it up into three players who are all good. I actually really like all three of these players. And they're on smaller contracts. They're much easier to trade. And if you don't trade them, you've just got three good players. And it's not like you're missing out on an MVP caliber player for getting a role player. Russ clearly isn't at an MVP level. And outside of Russell Westbrook's fucking Twitter stands, which are just toxic as fuck, he's not actually a good player. And I think Tommy Shepard's gotten away with absolute highway robbery. And then they somehow flipped the 22nd pick into Aaron Holiday and the 31st. Aaron Holiday hasn't been too good, but I'm a big fan of him. And the 31st pick, as we know, can be one of the most valuable picks in the whole entire league.
Well, I know that because Ali Akobo was the 31st pick a couple of years ago, and that turned out super well. So on the Lakers side, do you think this is desperation from Rob Pelinka, or do you think he genuinely has concocted some basketball plan where he thinks this is a good idea?
I think LeBron's very good at basketball, but he's not very good at being a GM. And we saw that sometimes in Cleveland with some of the moves that he wanted people to do. He obviously got Pat Riley to draft Shabazz Napier. But there was subsequent reporting coming from Broderick Turner of the LA Times saying that Westbrook, LeBron, and AD all met like a week ago to try and figure out a way to team up, which, it just screams GM LeBron out here doing stuff. And there was another report in there saying that AD wants to spend more time at the 5, which is fucking incredible. And like, that's the wet dream of all Lakers fans. But
I'll believe it when I see it.
It's like the wet dream of Lakers fans, except you wake up and like your whole family's watching you because you've just traded for Russell Westbrook. So like, it's bittersweet. Which, fuck, that was a weird analogy.
That was a weird analogy.
This comes from LeBron. This comes from LeBron's camp. And I just think he's got Rob Pelinka over a barrel. And if LeBron wants to do it at 37 years old, he's going to do it. I think this is a terrible move. Some people were saying it was a bit of a move to get better in the regular season because Russ, at the very least, stays healthy and he's a floor raiser. He'll help you win 44 games, right? Why the fuck are you doing that? You have LeBron James. You're going to be a title contender as long as he is wearing a jersey in your colors. Why are you worried about regular season games? So I don't think that's it. What do you think about it? Do you think this is is it sneaky good for Pelinka, or is this just as shit as it looks?
No, it's awful. I think you're right in saying that, we could look back on it in a few years' time and say like this was an unmitigated disaster, because those contracts and those players, whilst they are, I agree with you. Tommy Shepard has done really well in breaking them down and getting them on the Wizards. And you can either, like KCP, Kuzma, you can trade them. They've got manageable cap hits, like a little bit above the mid-level. So they'll have value if they trade Beal and decide to tear it down. Otherwise, like you say, you've just got a couple of good players. But the Lakers need shooting around LeBron. Last season, they were 21st in percentage and 24th in attempts. And KCP and Kuzma aren't like knockdown shooters, but at least they can shoot. Like Westbrook might be the worst shooter in the NBA. Like at least, maybe not the worst shooter in the NBA, but at least the worst volume shooter in the NBA. Because as it's become apparent over the last like 7 years, that it's just never going to happen for him as a jump shooter. He hasn't stopped taking them. And last season, his efficiency offensively was down. He's a terrible shooter. He wasn't getting to the rim as much. He wasn't finishing as well, which is like, what's his offensive value if he's going to keep shooting you in the foot, literally, and he's not compensating for that by getting to the rim and finishing at like a really high level? Yes, he's a crazy playmaker, and the rebounding will be like, really helpful. He obviously, you can talk about stat padding, whatever. He's a genuinely good rebounder, but he's not particularly good defensively. And he just introduces all of these problems that you need to compensate for by bringing other players in. And his contract just completely eliminates the possibility of like bringing anybody in. Like, who are you bringing in that's going to play meaningful minutes, that's going to shoot for you? Like, Bryn Forbes opted out of his contract. You're going to bring Bryn Forbes in on a veteran's minimum. Like, we just saw what happened with Bryn Forbes in the playoffs. Like, he comes in and hits 2 threes, but he gets, like mercilessly targeted. And then the guys who they're going to bring back, they'll bring back Morris, they'll bring back Caruso, and they'll bring back Horton Tucker. Are any of those guys plus shooters?
Will they bring back THT? Maybe he gets priced out.
Well, they literally have to bring him back because they've got bird rights on him and they need fucking players. Because between Westbrook's 44, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but let's say that LeBron and AD are 35 each. I'm not very good at math, but that's got to be pushing 120.
Yeah,
120 million for 3 players.
And like, sometimes those 3 players are KD, Curry, and Harden. These 3 are not those 3.
Yeah, I just think that I think the mindset for the Lakers, acknowledging that like LeBron probably only has 2 years left and maybe only has like this upcoming season at like a LeBron level. Like he missed a lot of time through injury, and he, kind of maybe chinks in the armor appearing in his invincibility. So I think the mindset of like, we got to maximize whatever we've got with this guy now is correct. I just think that it's a complete misapplication in saying that Westbrook, who literally we did a podcast a year ago when he was traded for John Wall, and we're like, oh, like, what do you even say about this? This just makes me sad, and I feel like I need to shower after it. That guy who then went and spent, a year on the middling Wizards, shooting 38% from the field for most of the season. Like that guy is not the guy who it's like, let's bring this guy in, especially because the Buddy Hield rumors, it didn't end up coming to fruition, but I was believe that Zach Lowe thinks that they were quite real and that the trade was going to be Kuzma and Harrell for Hield straight up, no pick involved, which to me is a better trade individually. And then it still lets you either keep KCP and like draft someone, like maybe draft a shooter. So that
Buddy, KCP, Alex Caruso next to LeBron and AD that's good. I really like that, even if you don't like the players individually.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. Well, I may be like less bullish on that, but I like it. Like it's okay, but Buddy Hield's good. Buddy Hield's good, and you're giving up not much to get him, and he's on 18 million versus Westbrook being on 44 and 47. And the thing with Hield is that he's just going to fit in any lineup that you want to play. Like he can play as a 2 with a point guard. He can play as a 2 next to LeBron. He can play up and play as a 3. He has experience. Hang
on. I've got a friend of the pod, Alessio, on the line, and he'd like to push back on the fact that Buddy Hield fits in every lineup.
Well, I think that his experience playing next to Fox and Halliburton last season, and then playing in more traditional lineups for the first few seasons that he was in Sacramento, I think that works. Whereas Westbrook completely just submarines your spacing and your lineup flexibility. AD will have to play the 5 because you can't have Westbrook, LeBron, AD, and a center because, who's the shooter? The shooter in that lineup would be Alex Caruso.
All right. Well,
it just introduces every single possible sort of problem that the last 10 years, every basketball decision maker has figured out. Oh shit! Like maybe we should avoid having one shooter on the floor, and they've just like not only it's double pronged because it introduces all these problems without really solving any of the problems they had before, and it completely precludes the possibility of them fixing the problems.
Well, let's look at it from Washington's perspective. And so if you go back a week ago, we were hearing the rumors. It's kind of weird how we're seeing trade requests go, but Bradley Beal was considering making a trade request before the draft. And there was some weird like wording where he hadn't asked for one, but he had asked for one. All of a sudden the Warriors dudes start coming out and saying, oh yeah, we're ready to like throw the bank at Bradley Beal. He's our number 1 option. And then after this trade, there's a report from Fred Katz at The Athletic that says that Bradley Beal had no issue with the team trading away Westbrook. So this, and he still hasn't requested a trade. Tommy Shepard, who must be coming out with the biggest fucking grin on his face at the next press conference, he must be like, oh no, Bradley hasn't requested a trade, and I've just fucking robbed the LA Lakers, right? So it's like Tommy Shepard's woken up last week. He's like, shit, Beal might be requesting a trade. He told me he wanted to be here for the rest of his career, etc. All of a sudden, he's able to trade away this dude. I reckon Pelinka called Washington to make this trade. I don't think Tommy Shepard was calling around saying, hey, this dude's available. Obviously, you've got the thing with LeBron wanting him to be on the team. And then the fact that instead of just simply moving off the contract, he's able to get a pick back as well. I think Bradley Beal would be over the moon. And now obviously we know that the Wizards are one of the final teams trading for Ben Simmons, which we're going to be getting into some Ben Simmons trade buzz as well. So it's Washington, Toronto, Miami, and those 3 teams are the 3 teams interested in getting Ben Simmons. So this could be an absolute turnaround for Washington. And instead of last week sitting there with an unhappy superstar, they've got a happy superstar. They've got plenty of assets. They've got plenty of pieces that can bundle together for a trade. And they're looking good. Like they now have 3 good centers in Daniel Gafford, Thomas Bryant, and Montrezl Harrell. Now, obviously, you can't have those 3 centers. They're going to have to make another move there, whatever it may be. They've got athletic young wings in Rui, Denny Avdia, and Kyle Kuzma, who, those 3 players are the kind of players where you're like, shit, you either love them or you hate them. It's like they're a bit of a icky fit, but at least they have this young talent there. And it's just, everything's looking good. And I feel really good for friend of the pod, Lucas, who came on at the start. I feel really good for his fucking mind space now that his team is like got direction, got somewhere to be, and they've got all the fucking flexibility in the world. Flexibility is very important, as you can see by my article I published last week, the scathing article about David Griffin and his lack of flexibility with that New Orleans roster.
I'm interested that you view it that way, because I don't view it that way for Washington, because I still think the odds are that like Beal would want to go. And I don't think that this trade like necessarily makes them better. I don't think that I don't think that it makes them better. And I don't think that it gives them the sort of assets that they would need to swing a trade, like what they turned that 22nd pick into 31 and Holiday, neither of which, if you were including them in a trade for someone bigger, neither of which would move the needle. So I think that it probably makes them worse right now, which I don't think, Beal would say like, I've got no problem. Like the word now, Beal has no problem with Westbrook being traded, but that doesn't mean that he's like, oh, like that guy's gone and now I'm like ready to go, because he's had experience that the year that John Wall sat out of him and a bunch of like average role players, what that's like. And yeah, he got to score 30 points a game and that was great for him, but he clearly like isn't interested in that. Like, if you told him, hey, you can score 22 a game and like you won't make an all NBA team, you might not make an all-star team, but like you could, be in the conference finals, he'd fucking take that in a second. So I don't know how much, I don't see it as a move that's going to like, soothe him and placate him and say, yeah, this is where I want to be. But I think on an organizational level, you probably just keep Kuzma, see how he goes this year, wash your hands of it if it doesn't work out. But he's the cut out of those three wings that you mentioned, because he's not the one that they drafted, and he's it's probably close, but like he's possibly the worst. KCP, you just hold on to him until the trade deadline, and whichever playoff contending team needs
a 3-and-D wing, all of them.
He's a 3-and-D wing. You'll just say, all right, contracts and a pick, and there you go. You can turn KCP into a pick so easily. Harrell will be good insurance for them at the start of the season, because I'm not sure what Thomas Bryant's injury status is, because he obviously tore his ACL last, like it was early in the season, but compressed schedule and everything. I'm not sure if he'll be ready to go for the start of the season. So Harrell is good insurance. And then Aaron Holiday, you mentioned that you like him. I kind of like him as well. I kind of see him as like a Dante DiVincenzo kind of player, if he can get the confidence back that he had early in his career when he was playing a lot for the Pacers, because he's an okay ball handler, but like you wouldn't trust him to run the offense. But when he's playing next to somebody, he just is a great slasher, getting inside and like making things happen. And he's a good defender. Like he's genuinely a good defender. So it's all like, for the Wizards, it's a slam dunk, because we were here a year ago after the Westbrook Wall trade, and we just wanted to never talk about it again, never think about it again. I mean, like, Lucas, I imagine, is over the moon to have Westbrook gone. Whatever happens with Beal, whether he stays or goes, they're in a much better situation now than they were. And yeah, it just seems like a complete own goal from the Lakers.
Well, let's move on, because that's about half an hour on the Westbrook trade, which I think is warranted. It's going to be one of the shittest trades in history, in my opinion. But looking at that Aaron Holiday trade from the perspective of the Indiana Pacers, they moved on from Aaron Holiday, 31st pick, obviously a valuable pick, to get their fucking fourth center. So they drafted, where is he? They drafted Isaiah Jackson, right? And he comes in as a 4-5. I don't know too much about it, but he's a big man. He comes into a team with Miles Turner, Domantas Sabonis. Obviously, if you're going to stagger them at the 5 position, or if you're going to play them together. And then behind them, they still have Goga Bitadze. They've got Jakar Sampson. They've got O'Shea Brissett, who played really well down the end of last year. They've got a lot of bigs. So they've just moved on from one of the most valuable picks to get another big into this team. I don't really know the thought process there. Do you want to talk about that, or should we move on to some of the bigger deals?
Let's move on some of the big deals, because
we honestly don't have time.
I have nothing to say about the Pacers' fourth center.
Okay. I was just want to say, like, that's pretty stupid. The most recent trade that happened just before we came on air was that Tristan Thompson was salary dumped to Sacramento, coming via Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN. So it was a 3-way deal that saw the Kings move on from DeLon Wright. So DeLon Wright goes to Atlanta, Chris Dunn goes to Boston, and Tristan Thompson comes to Sacramento. So Tristan Thompson gives them Rashawn Holmes insurance. Boston opens up money by only giving up a 2023 second round pick. Boston gives up money to be able to re-sign Evan Fournier, and Sacramento doesn't really get any assets in the trade. What do you reckon about it?
Well, I mean, I think from the Boston perspective, they must just be over the moon to get off Thompson, because that was, like buyer's remorse as soon as they signed him last season, pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, not as soon as they signed him. As soon as they saw him on the floor, they were like, "Oh shit." And you can only do what you can do now, but it's disappointing that they signed him, because that was the reason why they had to give up Daniel Tice at the trade deadline. So they gave up Tice for effectively nothing, just to shed his salary, so that they could then dump Thompson for whatever they could get. Not really much.
I think it's a pretty cheap price though. I was a bit surprised that it didn't take like a bad first to get off him. I mean, it's only 1 year, $9 million, I believe, but like this is a pretty cheap price to pay.
Yeah, very, very cheap. And you kind of get Chris Dunn, who, he didn't really play for the Hawks last season because he missed most of the season through injury, but they signed him to a 3-year, $15 million deal, with the idea that he could be like a situational on-ball defender, which is, something that they don't really have outside of Marcus Smart for someone who's guarding like guards. So he's a useful player to have around, and he's on, such a cheap contract that doesn't matter. So for them, that is a really good deal, just to get off him without having to attach heaps and heaps of assets, which obviously they'll need as they try and reconstruct this team from the ashes of the Kyrie Irving, Kemba Walker years that nothing kind of panned out. So they'll need to keep their powder dry for something down the line. So a pretty good run up from Brad
General
Stevens,
General Manager Brad Stevens.
Yeah, General Manager Brad Stevens. First, the Kemba trade, which was, getting Kemba over to OKC and getting Horford back and not really having to attach too much. And then this one, getting off Thompson.
Yeah,
he gets 2 ticks.
For peanuts.
Yeah, 2 ticks.
And then, so the move they made afterwards was just simply acquiring Josh Richardson from the Dallas Mavericks into their traded player exception. I can't remember what TPE that is. It might be part of Kemba Walker, because obviously Al Horford's not getting paid 36. So that's coming from Shams Charania of the Athletic. So the Celtics just get a look at Josh Richardson, which is the third team to have a look at him. This could be the end of the line if things don't pan out in Boston. So Josh Richardson, my favorite player from the 2016-17 season, the guy who helped me win my my fantasy league, is on the outs of the league. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, well, I just think it's crazy that there was a time when he was good, when he was really good. Like the Miami Josh Richardson was fully averaging like 17 points a game and playing like backup
2 steals
point guard
as well.
And playing mad defense and like running effective pick and roll. And the guy that we've seen in Philly and in Dallas just has not been anything like that. And I don't know, maybe there's something to it with him kind of having like a more off-ball role in those 2 stops where he's playing with very ball-dominant guards. But he hasn't thrived as like the archetypal 3-and-D. Like his D is kind of like slipped, and he just hasn't been shooting, and he's like lost all of his off the dribble sizzle. He's just got like no ability to score now. So I mean, you do it as Boston. Because like you say, it's just get a look at him.
You also have no choice, because how else are you going to try and get a 3-and-D wing on this team if you re-sign Fournier and you got no cap space? You sort of have to. Yeah.
And I mean, I think Marcus Smart's name's been thrown out in trade rumors for the last 18 months, and similar in theory, similar kind of player. If Richardson's D can pick up again to the level where it was in Miami. So I think that potentially might even be Marcus Smart insurance, should they decide to see what they could get, because Smart would genuinely have quite a lot of trade interest around the league, I would imagine.
I once said Golden State Warriors.
Potentially.
I don't know how you make the money work if it's not a Wiseman spot. Should we move on to Ben Simmons?
Yeah.
So
when Ben Simmons makes a 3. Anyway.
Good Greensboro kid. So obviously he is going to be moved from the Philadelphia 76ers. There were a few reports. I think there's a lot of talking going with Daryl Morey, but not a lot happening. So the first report from Adrian Wojnarowski at ESPN says that Simmons is in step with the 76ers in their attempt to trade him. He is, he's happy to move on, blah, blah, everything's going fine. And then Keith Pompey of the Philadelphia Inquirer said the team is willing to take the trade talks into the preseason and ready to play the long game if it happens, because I think Ben Simmons is one of the later dominoes to fall. We don't really he doesn't have to be the first dude to move in free agency. You're much more interested in what happens with Kyle Lowry and all these other dudes. According to that same Pompey report, Daryl Morey offered the Warriors Ben Simmons for Wiseman, Wiggins, 7, 14, and 2 future firsts, which is just fucking bullshit. Obviously, that was declined. And then, one league executive said that the Sixers are, quote, making totally outlandish offers, unquote, which is, I guess you got to do that before you settle down on a price later on in the preseason. And then the Sixers are, quote, uninterested, unquote, in taking back CJ McCollum in any deal, which I think is a bit stupid. I think if CJ McCollum is on the table, he might be the best returning player you can get in any deal. I don't see anything else better than that. And then according to Jake Fisher of Bleacher Report, the Toronto Raptors have had the most serious trade talks with Ben Simmons. I don't really know what that trade package looks like. Maybe it's OG Anunoby.
That package, allegedly, the Sixers wanted something to look like a pick, Van Vliet, and OG, and the Raptors said no. I think obviously the Raptors said no because that's just like, again, insane. Yeah. Would you trade him straight up for Siakam, or Siakam and filler, Siakam and fluff?
I don't really want Siakam on any team. I would trade him straight up for one of Anunoby and Fred VanVleet. Would you do that?
No, I don't think one of. I'd probably have to say like one of and a pick, and then I would
like
do that.
What, one of and Scotty Barnes.
Nah, not. They won't give up Scotty. Scotty Barnes is the 4th pick. Like,
I know.
That's valuable. Scotty Barnes and like one of, and then like a 2023, like lottery first, just in case there's still shit. Like, because OG is tantalizing because he's obviously very good right now, but every time I watch him, I'm like, this guy could be fucking excellent. Like, this guy just has so much like
he's so fucking built, man,
in his game. And obviously, Van Vliet is already quite good, but with Lowry probably leaving and the Raptors deciding to take Scotty Barnes at 4 when Jalen Suggs, the point guard from Gonzaga, was still on the board, I'd be very, very surprised if they were then like, all right, we're prepared to like move Van Vliet. Like, I think those corresponding moves suggest that he's staying.
Yeah.
I'd have to think about Siakam because I'm not Siakam's biggest fan, but like, are we getting sucked into the Morey rumor mill with all of these picks that they're asking and overvaluing Simmons? Because it's only a month ago or 2 months ago that we're like, wow, this guy's fucking washed. This guy's fucking got nothing.
Gave up a wide open shot. I think the pass.
So I wonder, like, maybe Siakam is fair value because, like Simmons, he's a player who has hit some pretty high highs, but in the last year or so that, there've been enough things going on that make you seriously question building a team around him. But he's a big wing who probably fits pretty well with Joel Embiid. All
right. Well,
and he can't really shoot that well, but he can shoot better than Simmons.
Yeah, you run into the same issues because he's better than Simmons. Obviously, like a bag of peanuts with a chair is better than Simmons. But I mean, from a shooting perspective, but like. Like, what about a Washington trade? What if it's built around getting Davis Bertans next to Joel Embiid? And that sounds stupid as Davis Bertans as the fucking returning piece. But if you put Bertans next to Embiid, you have a defensive player of the year candidate who's going to make up for the fact that Davis can't defend that bag of peanuts on a chair. and like you've just a complete polar opposite in terms of shooting next to him. So on offense, he just plays the Mike Scott role, and he's an absolute Latvian laser, as we know. And then Washington can also give up like some pretty hefty assets, whether that be like a KCP or a Kuzma, and just future picks. So would you like a trade built around Bertans and just a collection of assets?
Well, it depends what those assets look like. I think Bertans next to Embiid sounds really, really good, but Bertans is on, I think he's on 17 million a year. Yeah, 16 million a year. And he's an excellent shooter, but he's not a good basketball player because he just contributes nothing else. So that trade is probably going to be in a situation where a player like that gets overvalued. And Washington's certainly not going to give him up like easily. They'll value him highly. So I think you need to throw in one of Hachimura and Avdia, and possibly like, another young asset. Like, probably doesn't make sense to talk about a Gafford because, they don't really want to take a center back with Embiid. So another, I don't know, like who are like the random young players like that they've got?
There's like Rui or Denny. There's your mate Anthony Gill. Do you like Garrison Matthews?
Nah. So it would need to be like
Garrison Matthews is good, man.
For me, not as a as a move the needle.
Yeah.
For me to consider that trade, it would need to be, like Bertans, one of Denny or Rui, like whichever you prefer, and then possibly like a couple of picks, because that's not really moving the needle for me. I would do Siakam and Fluff over that trade.
All right. What if it's based around CJ McCollum and like 2023 top 3 protected pick?
That's getting closer. I think that's getting closer than a Wizards one. I probably would want to throw like another role player in there. They've got a couple of like rando young dudes that you can take a punt on, like Anthony Simons, Nas Little, Harry Giles, YOLO, he's in there. So make it CJ a pick and a young player of your choosing, and then that probably gets it done. If I was Daryl Morey. Yeah, I just have faith that he's going to end up gaming this right. Like he is going to get a good return because he just knows what he's doing, and he's done an excellent job with this team so far. Obviously they were disappointing, but we were talking about them when he took over as like, wow, like what are they going to do? They've got no options. They're paying everyone all this money.
Oh, he inherited Al Horford.
Yeah, he came in and shed every bad contract that they had,
and somehow got Danny Green in that.
Yeah, exactly. Little did he know that Simmons was going to develop into something less than like an amazing contract. So I think he'll get it. I think he'll get it right, but I just would be wary as like the basketball commentariat being sucked in by all of these. Like we can look at them and say that's outlandish, but like I wonder if there's like some effect that we keep seeing these picks, like these crazy trade deals, and we're kind of like being desensitized to how crazy they are because he's a very unstable and uncertain asset. So,
well, maybe if he's on the phone with Tommy Shepherd trying to get a Washington deal done, maybe you can just ask him for his hand to get a trade done because the fucking Westbrook trade is just a piece of magic.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing, if they were going to discuss with Washington, that conversation would start with Beal. And I think with Beal on the team, Morey would just be like, look, if Beal's not in the trade, like I don't want to do it. And the reporting around hasn't he with the trade request from Beal has been really strange. So we don't really know where we stand with that. But obviously Tommy Shepherd's been very vocal about wanting to keep Beal. So that could end up just being a non-starter. And then there was rumors that he was I don't know who had the report first, but that he was being offered, that Simmons was being offered to the Spurs as well for a collection of their rando young talent and picks.
I would you can imagine all the other trades than that.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
We were over the moon when we first heard that the NBA was going to be televised on Australian free-to-air TV in the 2019-20 season. It didn't exactly go swimmingly with the nasty cough halting the season and games getting cancelled left, right, and centre, but it was a huge step and an exciting one for basketball fans all across the country.
Better yet, it wasn't a commercial channel cashing in on some basketball nerds like us. It was SBS, one of our public broadcasters. Unfortunately, the NBA wasn't the only thing SBS was pushing last season. They also ran advertisements from Sportsbet, Ladbrokes, Bet365, BetEasy, and Neds, some of the biggest sports betting companies in Australia.
In a one step forwards, two steps backwards move, SBS has dropped the ball here. As a public broadcaster, SBS plays a key role in providing relevant, culturally appropriate health information to local communities. The last thing SBS should be doing is offering a platform for gambling companies during the most financially unstable time in recent memory.
This past year, men aged 18 to 24 made up 79% of new gambling account holders, with increased median spending and frequency of bets. This is the last thing we should be spending our money on given the financial uncertainty that comes with the pandemic. During COVID lockdowns, wagering companies spent more money on advertising and incentives to gamble, and it worked. SBS needs to hear from viewers that gambling ad revenue isn't worth the harm it causes. Call on the SBS chair, George Savitas, to put community health ahead of gambling revenue by signing the petition at www.endgamblingAds.org.au/get-gambling-off-SBS with hyphens in between.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to the point guard market before we go through the NBA draft. A lot of point guards on the market. And I feel terrible for Dennis Schroeder because now that LA has a point guard, they're likely not going to re-sign Dennis. So Dennis becomes the fifth, sixth option behind all these dudes. So I'll just run through the news of what has been happening with the point guards. First up is the restricted free agency of Lonzo Ball. And Shams Charania of The Athletic says that the Bulls, Celtics, Raptors, and Pacers are going to pursue Lonzo. Note, there was no word of the Pelicans there. The Jazz have said that they will offer Mike Conley 3 years at $75 million. Spencer Dinwiddie is going to receive interest from the Nets, Wizards, Knicks, Heat, and Raptors, coming from Fred Katz and Shams Charania of The Athletic. And then Keith Pompey of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Man, I'm struggling with that word, but he says that Kyle Lowry is seeking somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 years, $90 million in free agency. And then subsequent reporting says that he will be pursued by the 76ers, Knicks, Mavs, Pelicans, and Heat. The first thing I want to mention there is that there was no link between Lonzo Ball and the Pelicans, and there is a link between Kyle Lowry and the Pelicans and no other team, which obviously that's interesting because they might be swapping teams. And the Miami Heat are sort of throwing their hat in every single name here, which is just very Miami Heaty.
Extremely Miami Heaty. I would be very, very uncomfortable if I was a team interested in Lowry and he said he wants 3 years, $90 million.
Yeah.
Kyle Lowry's 36. I'm not paying a 39-year-old $30 million.
Everyone's looking at it through fucking Chris Paul colored glasses, man. Everyone's like, well, what if he can come in here? Like, is he a vegan yet? Does he do fucking yoga and Tai Chi? Like, can you get that dude? Like, fucking Cade Cunningham's a vegan. Like, he's already locked himself up a $90 million contract when he's 36, just by like ticking off all the right boxes. But I think everyone's looking at the Chris Paul experience. Chris Paul, who might be the point guard, is sort of changing the perspective of all these aging point guards. And it's like, I think Chris Paul's the exception to the rule. Not everyone's going to be that good when they're 36. Even if Chris Paul is a small guard who somehow manages to do it despite, his body type aging poorly. I agree with you. I would be a little bit worried offering Kyle Lowry $90 million. Even Mike Conley, someone who's just like that could be really bad in the back end.
I think it's only $5 million a year, but I'd be more comfortable offering Lowry and Conley something like 3 years, 75. Like I think that's okay. It's when you start putting the 3 as the first number that it just gets really hairy. And Conley's a little bit younger than Lowry, so that's not going to be potentially quite as bad on the back end. Although Conley has had some niggles the last couple of years, to say the least. So how his body holds up as he gets older, I don't know. And I think, it would be, I understand the temptation looking at the Chris Paul experience and saying let's load up. But I think it would be naive to suggest that was the rule or something that can be replicated easily. I think that if as has been heavily suggested that the Pelicans are really, really interested in him. I think that Zion Williams will be gone within a couple of years if that's what happens, because I don't think that that's going to propel them into the conversation in the West. And like I'm probably not super happy to give Lonzo Ball $20 million. Like
yeah, you've been on record saying that before.
I don't know, like 22 a year, that just kind of like makes me feel a little bit icky. But I'd much rather give Lonzo like 4 years 90 than Lowry 3 years 90.
Yeah,
because at least Lonzo's not the player that Lowry is, but like Lowry's going to be 39. Like what 39-year-old
there's
point
no
guard
upside there whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, Jason Kidd was the last 39-year-old point guard to like have a deep run in the playoffs, and he was effectively like not moving by the end of that run. So he also wasn't earning $30 million.
Yeah.
So I'd be very, very hesitant about offering Lowry. If it was 2 years, 60, yeah, all right, we'll talk about it, because I'm protecting myself on the years. And even if I only get a season and a half out of him because of injury or whatever, his play declines, like I'm not locking myself in on like a max level, a near max level contract for 3 years. It's just like very hairy. What would you be doing if you were a team interested in Spencer Dinwiddie?
I would be over the moon that some of the other teams are avoiding him. I don't know. Spencer Dinwiddie could be the best point guard here. He's much younger. I think he's 29 years old. Let me just confirm that. He's much younger than everyone else. I think he might even be better than everyone else. He's 28 years old and 116 days. And like, if you're one of those teams like the Mavs or the Pelicans or the Heat are getting a bit up there, the Knicks, and you want a point guard who is going to be good throughout that life of the contract and can maybe even get better, Spencer Dinwiddie is the best option there. I don't know why people are falling in love with Kyle Lowry and Mike Conley when, like I said, I think people are just too obsessed with the Chris Paul experience. Do you agree with me that Spencer Dinwiddie might be the best option out there?
I've kind of done a bit of an about face on Dinwiddie. I used to be quite a big fan, and I'm kind of like turning around a little bit on that.
As in what? I mean, you haven't seen him play basketball since like February. Like,
no. Well, what I was saying, what I was saying before, like over the last, like 18 months that he's been healthy, the last season and a half. He's not a great shooter, and he's pretty shaky inside the arc as well. So for a dude he's genuinely like a really excellent playmaker. But if he's like your starting point guard and he's taking like 16 shots a game, I'm not 100% sure that that's something that I'm in on. But again, it depends on what the number is, because if it's 15, if you're telling me I can get him for 15 a year and I offer him 4 years 60 and he takes it, well, I'd rather have that than Lonzo Ball on 4 years 80 or 90, and I'd rather have that than either of the old blokes. I think it's worth mentioning that Utah's probably only offering Conley that much because they're like, well, this guy fits. We're an excellent team. Like, it doesn't make sense for Utah to just like try and get a different point guard.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
Bringing Conley back, it's not really a matter of like, is he better than someone else or is he better than so-and-so? Because they're just not going to do that. But with Conley, again, it is the number. I don't know. I mean, if the Dinwiddie number was 20, then I probably wouldn't be that interested. But if it was 15 and I can say like, let's lock you up for 15 a year going forward, then that's, I think, a real value contract, even if he, proves he continues being a really shaky shooter and not offering much value as an efficient scorer. He can definitely be a table setter for the right team. So,
right. Well, just final point on the point guard market with let's read between the lines here. And so David Griffin has said that he's interested in Kyle Lowry, and through this report, not interested in Lonzo Ball. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt, which is something I'm not very fond of doing, as you can read in my most recent article. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt. And let's say he knows that Kyle Lowry is coming to New Orleans. Like, he loves gumbo, right? And he just can't wait to join New Orleans roster. So if you're David Griffin and that's your grand plan, right? Your grand plan is you salary dumped those guys to Memphis with the knowledge of you're getting Kyle Lowry. you've got your young core of Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson, and you're surrounding those two with Jonas Valanciunas, who's 30, and Kyle Lowry, who's 36. You still haven't made the playoffs. It's not like Kyle Lowry is the final push to get you into title contention. You're a team that has never made the playoffs, and you're bringing in like sort of a final piece. Like Kyle Lowry is like the final piece to a puzzle. Like if Kyle Lowry signs with Philadelphia, you're like, sweet, now they've got this veteran point guard coming in with an MVP level Joel Embiid, and they're making a push for the finals, right? This New Orleans team hasn't made the playoffs. So is this a push to make the playoffs? And then like what? So let's say you make the playoffs next year, maybe you win a round, and then the following year, Kyle Lowry gets a little bit worse. You can't actually add anything to that roster because you've got so much money tied up everywhere. You just make another push in the playoffs. Don't go anywhere because it's only like these dudes' fucking second playoffs ever. For the young guys, like where are you going? Like what's the thing there? Because as soon as you finish that Kyle Lowry experience, you're gonna have all this open cap space. You're gonna have like Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson's going to be properly paid, and then it's like, sweet, we don't have much of a core to build around. We're just going to find another Kyle Lowry. It's like, what are you building for? And like, I think New Orleans is such an interesting roster and such an interesting case study, and David Grisham should be fired. But like, what are you doing here? Like, there's no upside in getting like the final piece in Kyle Lowry. What do you think about that situation?
Well, he's just trying to keep Zion in the city. I think is what he's trying to do.
That's so like, is he making a move to keep his job? Because like, what the fuck are you doing, man? Like,
well, I mean, like, if Zion wants to trade, like Griffin should be fired.
Yeah.
So he's there. The two things are like, inextricably connected. If Zion wants out, Griffin should be gone as well. And every move that Griffin makes to keep Zion is also going to be a move to keep his job. And I think before you can even start looking at, they'll probably say before you can start looking at like, let's contend, let's just, be in the hunt for the play-in next season. And if that means getting someone like Lowry in, even on a big number, and then if we're the 8th seed next season and we make the playoffs and Zion's like, oh, cool, playoff basketball, and like, this is the city and the team that delivered that for me. That's what I want. I'm happy to be here, yada, yada. Then they would call that a success. And they would say like, if the collateral damage is the final year of $30 million on Lowry's contract and he plays half a season and he's not very good, then they'd say, all right, well, like, we'll just cross that bridge when we come to it. That would be their justification. But yes, I think potentially there's some danger of being short-sighted.
It just screams signing Omer Ashik, trading for Tyreek Evans. It just screams trying to build a contender around Zion right now, when
in the way that they did with AD,
in the exact same way that they did with AD. And I don't know, it's so annoying. It's so fucking annoying, man.
Yeah, well, I think there are definite parallels. But whether the Zion like wanting to leave noise is actually real, you've heard that for a little while.
A lot of the reports are coming from New York dudes there. So there was the one report of substance coming out of New Orleans was that Zion's family wants him to leave, but all the other reports have been like, oh, Zion blinked twice when someone said Mecca of basketball and like shit like that. So it's like, yeah, look, good on you, SNY, you're planting the seeds for Zion to be a free agent. Like, fuck, man, we all know it's going to happen. So like, I don't put too much stock in it because there are a lot of New York dudes just trying to like sow discord and discontent. But it's never good. Like, you're not hearing that Ja Morant is fucking pissed off and like his family wants him to move. Like, obviously not. And I think just the case study comparing it to the Memphis Grizzlies, because the Grizzlies have, let's say they've got their Zion and their Brandon Ingram in Triple J and Ja Morant, and they're sitting there and they traded for Justice Winslow to try and get another like wing defender and stuff. Justice Winslow didn't work. He's going to be a free agent this year and they're going to let him walk. So they made their team worse on the court by being a dumping ground for Eric Bledsoe and Steven Adams to get a higher pick to try and hopefully get up and get that third piece to build around these dudes. They're like, the Grizzlies have made the playoffs and they're not rushing it. The Grizzlies, so they just took on salary to draft Zion Williams 10th because they know that they need more pieces to build around and build a title contender. And they know it's not a rush. And it's like, it's just such differing ways to go about it, and I think Memphis's way is just so much better.
Yeah, I think as a case study, Memphis is showing a blueprint for what, you know, a small market team with a young star should be doing. But it is easier for them to sell Jar on, like, trust me, we know what we're doing, because they have had that success early on. Like, they almost made the playoffs when he was a rookie, and then they did make the playoffs as a sophomore. Like, Zion being told by David Griffin and management, like, hey, bro, trust us. We got it. We'll figure it out. When there's another fucking all-star on the roster in Brandon Ingram, you know, and several other dudes who have been like higher level pieces on, you know, on playoff teams over the last 5 years, like Adams, Bledsoe, etc. I think that's more just a more difficult sell for Zion, like coming from, you know, some people who he might not think are particularly good at their jobs. Whereas I think Jar probably does have that trust with the coaching staff and the front office there. Should we move on to the draft?
Yeah. Let's just go through a couple of winners and losers each, I reckon.
Yeah, let's do it.
You go first.
Well, I mean, I'm going to say a winner is Josh Giddey jumping up to 6 to OKC, not only because, you know, he gets a little bit of extra dosh, but they were talking about him going in like the 10 to 14 range. And I think that going 6 is really good for him, because the Thunder have such a good track record of developing players, and he's got obvious strengths. That's why he went there. He's massive point guard, really, really fluid athlete, and really good playmaker. But the shot apparently is not good. You were talking the other day about his knees touching when he's shooting
fucking
threes.
Knees touch when he jumps, man. It's like, oh,
I think
a shot surgeon, not a shot doctor.
I think that him going to OKC is probably good, because he
can slow play his development.
Yeah, out of the spotlight, and they'll give him plenty of chances to, you know, to prove everything, possibly playing like a pretty interesting core of players.
Melbourne's answer to Adam Morrison.
What does that even mean?
I'm not sold on Josh Giddey. Like, he's a great passer, right? What else does he do? He's big.
Well, he's big, and he's a pretty fluid athlete. So I think that
he's got a great feel for the game. He'll be in the right spots at the right time.
Would you say that he's cerebral?
Yes, cerebral. 3 decisions, your quick decisions, pass, dribble, shoot. You know, he knows where to be, and he's a great kid, great character, cerebral player. No, it's just like everything else is so much more sexy. And like, it's sort of OKC stuff, because yes, they are sitting there outside of the top 5, and this was a 5-player draft, but fucking Kuminga was there. But
Kuminga was there because he's steadily fallen down the rankings because of concerns not only on the court, but like that off the court he might be a bit of a Fruit Loop.
Isn't everyone a bit of a Fruit Loop?
Well, not really. You just said
so
Josh
random.
Giddey, you just said Josh Giddey, like a high character guy. Like Kuminga, all of the conversation, excuse me, all the conversation around Kuminga has been like, well, you know, he's going to need strong coaching and like strong management so that he like understands that like he's not the guy like immediately, because on that team, you know, on the Ignite team, he kind of thought like, I'm the champion of this team. Like, I'm the reason why like this team is going to succeed or not succeed.
Also, it's not very good that like in J League Ignite, Jalen Green shot the shit out of the ball and like scored at a very high level in not much spacing, and Kuminga was part of the reason why there wasn't much spacing, because he wasn't playing that well. And like, yeah, obviously anything happens on that J League Ignite team, and you're just like, oh, okay, by the way, they're just like, you know, these are just like young dudes who are just playing in the G League. Like, don't expect much. But it was kind of telling that Jalen Green excelled in that situation, and Kuminga didn't. Well, I'll go on to my winner and loser. I've got the loser as the Golden State Warriors for drafting Jonathan Kuminga and Moses. That's not funny. That's not a fucking funny joke. But Kendrick Perkins is a fucking idiot. He said that Kuminga reminded him of Jordan Bell. And it's like, what the fuck did you just say?
Well, I mean, I think that is objectively pretty silly, but is part of this the fact that you just can't bear the thought that your 7th overall pick is Jordan Bell?
No, they're fucking different positions. But I woke up thinking, oh, I'm going to check my phone. Have we traded 7 and 14 yet? And there's a report just before the draft or just after saying that they aggressively tried to move out of 7 and 14 to get anything, whether that be Bradley Beal or just anyone on the street. And they couldn't do it. And I'm like, oh no. And I had a flashback to Draymond Green at the end of the season after being eliminated by the Memphis Grizzlies, him saying, I'm going to be in the room and I'm going to be helping make some decisions because we need to get some veterans in here. And it's like you've just drafted 2 raw prospects. It's like, yes, I love both of these dudes. I think we did a great job at getting value for our position, but Draymond Green wants to contend now. So there was a report after the draft from Marcus Thompson of The Athletic, said that Draymond Green endorsed the 2 picks before they were made. Steph Curry doesn't really throw shots at the front office, but you imagine he wants to contend as soon as possible as well. But now, like, we're towing the line, and like, the 7 and 14 picks are much more valuable before they get selected. And now, obviously, going into next season, we've got these 2 dudes in the roster. Things get hard to trade because now they have salaries. You have to make matching salary. And obviously, the Warriors are so deep in the tax, they literally can't take anything back. And it's like, we're doing the worst case scenario if we want to win a championship next year. So the best thing would have been to move off those picks and get someone who can contend now. And now we're like, what are we doing? We're doing this 2 window thing where it's like, okay, Steph Curry, you're at an MVP level. Can you try and win us a championship now? But when you do retire, we've got Big Jim, we've got Kuminga, and we've got Moses Moody who are going to be able to take the mantle. And it's like, just commit to something. And obviously, you're not going to commit to trading Steph Curry so you can get a couple of first-round picks for next year. You have to commit to contending now, and they've towed that line.
Yeah, but that only works if Kuminga and Wiseman are ready to go now, and they don't need 3 years to develop. And part of the reason why Kuminga fell, as well as like the kind of mentality and like mental makeup stuff, is because he was kind of viewed a bit more as a project, a bit more of a raw player, someone who doesn't have that shot that's like ready to go. And if you're talking about like a rookie wing who maybe is talented in some aspects, but isn't ready to go straight away, like that 2 window thing doesn't really work because he's effectively giving you the same value as like a 3-and-D role player. Is he going to give you the same value as like Danny Green? Maybe not even, because Danny Green's a great defender and a great shooter, So like if you got like someone who like in terms of net value is like Danny Green or Danny Green adjacent, that 7th pick 2 window thing kind of goes a little bit out the window because by the time that he's ready, maybe Steph Curry will be 36. And
is Steph Curry vegan or not yet?
No, he'll be vegan when he goes to Charlotte and brings Charlotte into the playoffs.
Oh man, yeah,
in 2 years' time.
Him and LaMelo.
So I think it is the worst case scenario, like because you're now for that to work, like Big Jim has to turn into DeAndre Ayton now.
Yeah, Big Jim. Big Jim just had fucking surgery on his meniscus, and he's not going to play for the first half of the year.
Is that confirmed?
That's confirmed. He had meniscus surgery at the end of last year.
Yeah, well, he's gonna miss that long though.
He'll miss. He's definitely not there on opening night, and he's not playing in summer league. So you imagine if he's not going to be ready for the start of the season, and you want to slow play it, you want to take it safe, take the safe route. It's a lot more Kevon Looney, and I love Kevon Looney as much as the next bloke, but that's too much Kevon Looney.
That is a lot of Kevon Looney. Well, I just want to mention an Olympics deep cut because I've been watching a little bit of the men's basketball, and the Rockets picked up Usman Garuba, the Spanish power forward, at number 23, and he looks pretty good in the Olympics. He's not playing much because he's behind the Gasol brothers, but he's looked pretty decent, cleaning the glass. He hasn't really done much like offensively, but he can really move his feet and like stay with players on the perimeter. And he's a great rebounder.
Yeah, him and Chris Wood is a sexy pairing. I actually did a scouting report for nuglove.com on Usman Garuba. Actually, I did it on a bunch of dudes, and fucking Denver ended up drafting a guy named Bones. So obviously didn't do a Bones Highland scouting report because I was like, who the fuck are you? Usman Garuba is so much fun. And I look at him as like a Kenneth Faried on offense with a little bit less bounce, But if Kenneth Faried could play in a switching system and seriously defend everyone, and obviously he's going to look better in FIBA where it's a lot slower and a lot more physical. But I really like, I was going to like Usman Gruber wherever he goes. And I actually really like the fact that he's in Houston and they can just throw him out there and say, man, do whatever, because we have nothing to lose.
Yeah, and they'll be able to afford him potentially the time to experiment a little bit and potentially expand his offensive game.
Can I just build on the fucking affording him thing there? Because he's actually got a very strange buyout clause in his Real Madrid contract. So he's under contract for, I think, like 2 or 3 more years there. And then the NBA gives all teams a maximum of $800,000 to buy out players out of their European contract. You can't go over that whatsoever. And in Usman Garuba's Real Madrid contract, it's something like 3 million euros as a buyout. So the Houston Rockets can willingly give him that $800,000 to help buy him out of his contract. That's like, that doesn't affect the cap at all or anything. That literally is just something that every single team does. But the fact that Garuba's thing goes up to 3 million euros means that the leftover money outside of that $800,000 just is going to get billed to Garuba. There's no way that the NBA team can legally help him buy out of that contract. And you're like, shit, man. So Garuba's coming in and he's at a deficit because he owes Real Madrid a lot of money. You're like, that really sucks. But then also that was negotiated into his contract and he should have just done a better job at negotiating, and Real Madrid just, big team gets away with a little bit more money. So that's just like an interesting tidbit in the Garuba thing. And I thought that was actually going to make him fall a little bit, but he didn't fall at all. So that's nice. And I sort of wish he was in Denver to be the second coming of Kenneth Faried if he could actually defend.
That's so shit that he's going to owe Madrid $2 million. Hopefully they just waive that. That seems like
I mean, it's a lot of money.
It's fucking heaps of money. Well, one last thing that I want to touch on is just the top 5. So most people, by the time you listen to this, will know the top 5, but it pretty much went chalk with the first 3. So it was Cunningham at number 1 to Detroit, and then Green and Mobley 2 and 3 to Houston and Cleveland. And Orlando should be sending Toronto a really nice Christmas card this year saying, thanks for taking Scotty Barnes 4 and preventing us from taking the lanky wing who can't shoot again, because Magic couldn't take Scotty Barnes, which you just fucking know they would have if they had the ability. Because who could resist Scotty Barnes next to all of the fucking lanky blokes who can't shoot? That the Magic have cycled through. So they ended up with Jalen Suggs at 5, which seems, like pour one out for Markel Fultz, bloke can't catch a break. But Jalen Suggs seems like a good choice there. Get someone who can actually do something with the ball in hand to potentially work with all of the guys they have that can't do anything with ball in hand. See every player on the roster except for Markel Fultz who'll probably miss half the season with an ACL.
Yeah, I just want to make one final winner and loser. I got the loser as the San Antonio Spurs. And I was watching the draft with resident San Antonio Spurs fan Jackson, and he was ecstatic as soon as the pick went through when they drafted Josh Primo at 12, because he knew immediately that it wasn't Corey Kispert or Alfred Sengun. He was just ecstatic that he didn't get a tall, white, big man. But then I also did a draft preview for the Denver Nuggets on Josh Primo going at 26. And I didn't see here. I actually saw him. Some people had him in the second round. Some people had him, in the late 20s. And the Spurs were able to maximize their value of a mid-teens pick by drafting someone who was supposed to go in the mid-20s. So absolute beautiful pick there. He is 19. He can shoot the shit out of the ball, but he averaged like 7 points for Alabama last year. So Josh Primo, I wish you the best of luck, and you're going in at a deficit already, which sucks.
Well, hopefully he turns out to be good. I'm thinking of you, Jackson.
All right. Well, how do you want to close this thing?
Well, should we talk about the deep2.com?
Oh, we should probably talk about the deep2.com. And if you listen to this, why don't you just open up your browser of choice and type in the search bar the deep2.com to see our website, which is fucking live right now and looks great.
It does look great. So the website's going to be the base for everything that we've got. So we're going to move all of our content over from all of our written content over from Medium to the Deep2 and just host it there. And then you'll be able to access the podcast, which you'll obviously still be able to get through Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And then also our socials, it'll just be everything all in one place. It looks really, really nice. Shout out to friend of the pod, Sean Conlon, for all of the development that he's done.
The Deep 2 NBA podcast CTO, Chief Technology Officer.
Put that on the resume.
Yeah. Again, shout out to Sean for doing an absolutely incredible job. It looks gorgeous. It's still looking more gorgeouser as time progresses. And look, you may as well read the most recent article that's on there as well, talking about, or aptly titled, "Fire David Griffin."
I wonder what that one's about.
Yeah, maybe it's about Tommy Shepard just fucking getting away with a highway robbery. I still can't believe that. I hope we never stop talking about that. I hope that ends up being in the same vein as Malcolm Brogdon, letting Malcolm Brogdon walk because you want to pay the tax.
Never letting it go.
Anyway,
just to wrap it up, everyone should go and read that Sean article because it was scintillating and scathing. I hope David Griffin doesn't have very thin skin, because if he sees that, he won't be very happy. There's an article that I've written about my dear Phoenix Suns going up later in the week, so you should check that out as well. And just putting a call out to anybody who's thinking that they might like to write something for us over the off season. We're always open to submissions, so get in contact with us via email or on our socials, all of which you can find at thedeep2.com, and let us know.
Awesome. Well put, Dante. I'll speak to you next week.